Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Joy Asonya Live this evening. As usual, we are discussing trending political stories. We also delve into social, economic and others. Well, today we'll be talking about how Nigerian citizens can be included in the anti-corruption fight. It is no news, however, that corruption is a major problem in Nigeria and is largely responsible for the widespread poverty and underdevelopment that we all face. According to the UN and the AU, around $148 billion is stolen from Africa annually by political leaders, multinational corporations, the business elite, and civil servants, with complicity of banking and property industries in Europe, North America, and everywhere. Transparency International, that's recently also ranked Nigeria 105th out of 180 countries ranked in its 2022 Corruption Perception Index. That's quite concerning if you would look at those statistics. Now, how can we involve the citizens, the office of the citizens, that is, as it's often referred to, in this anti-corruption fight? That's what we'll be discussing today on Joy Asonya Live. And we have Mr. Lukman Adekunle, Executive Director, 21st Century Community Empowerment for Youth and Women Initiative, in the studio. Yesterday we had, I attended rather, a very interesting and enlightening program where we had a national dialogue on anti-corruption. Mr. Adekunle was also part of that. He played an active role and gave some of the things he would have to say on the program today. Thank you so much for being part of the program.
Thank you for having me, and good evening, Nigerians.
Good evening to you too. Well, we'll just go for a very short break right now and return to discuss more on how Nigerian citizens can be included in the anti-corruption fight. We'll be back after this short break. Welcome back from that short break. Now, the former administration had, under President Muhammadu Buhari, while working with the international community, showed commitment and determination to fight corruption. It also expressed clear roadmap on how to trace, track, and repatriate looted assets to countries of origin to finance development. Like I said earlier, we have Mr. Lukman Adekunle, Executive Director of 21st Century Community Empowerment for Youth and Women Initiative and a cluster member of the Anti-Corruption Cluster of Scale Project of the ANEEJ. Thank you so much for being part of the program again, but let's go down to it.
Okay.
The past administration, if we have to do a quick appraisal as to how they did in the fight against corruption, they came on the heels of fighting corruption. Where would you say we are in what their efforts were? I know how Nigerians perceive this, especially if you are on social media, just as I am.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think it depends on the lens you are using to look at the past administration in terms of fighting corruption. Some school of thought may argue that they can't see the impact. But for us, that we are practitioners in the space, we can tell you that we have seen improvement. Improvement in the sense that when you look at the legal framework, we've moved from where we were before the administration. A lot of bills turns into law under that administration. A lot of policies turns into action. One of the laws that administration were able to pass during their time, which is very key to Nigeria, because Nigeria has been championing the asset recovery at the international level. So we were able to pass the Proceeds of Crime and Management Act into law in 2022. Within that space, other two important laws were also passed by the Ninth Assembly under same administration. The Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering Amendment law, as well as counterterrorism law. They were all passed under that last administration. Under that administration, we were able to have a national anti-corruption strategy adopted by the FEC, because it took us about 16 years to get that adopted by FEC. So which, for us that we are in the space, we said having the strategy alone is a plus for the country. Yes, the implementation may have some itches. There is no any perfect system in anywhere in the world. But to a large extent, the administration did their best. They gave us what they could. And also, if you look at the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index that you mentioned at the background, it's a perception. And what that tool is measuring is not the numbers of anti-corruption agencies a country has. It is how effective the system in place really touch the lives of the citizens. So a lot of businessmen refers to it, rely on it, which is good. There's nothing wrong in it. And if you look at the 2022 report, we almost maintain the same thing compared to 2021. But that doesn't mean the last administration did bad completely in terms of fighting corruption. I give you an example. A policy on whistleblowing was introduced under that administration.
Exactly.
When the former Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, brought the idea that in the absence of whistleblowing act, can we have a policy domicile within the Ministry of Finance, and a committee was set up, Presidential Initiative on Continuous Audit, to manage the implementation of that. And the essence of that policy then was to encourage Nigerians to be part of governance in terms of reporting act of corruption in the country, which to some extent the popular Ikoyi loot recovery,
exactly.
It was under that administration as well too. Whether they now use the resources well or not, that is another discussion. But having that picker in place, they have their challenges, but there are successes they recorded because PICA worked closely with citizen and civil society organizations and media to popularize that policy document. And our project is now leveraging on all those achievements to see how the 10th Assembly we get that whistleblowing policy that has been delayed at the National Assembly passed. Because when we now have that legal framework in place, it gives Nigeria some level of relevance and protection to blow whistle. Apart from the incentive attached to the policy implementation, then some people were given what they were due to if you blow whistle successfully. And so, to large extent,
were they given?
Yes, they did.
If they were, what then was such a problem with the whistleblowing policy? We had, I mean, speculations and allegations at the time that Nigerians did not feel protected by that policy, and some of those who even came forward to blow the whistle, there was this conspiracy against them, and government would even go against those who had come out to speak out about the corruption they faced or they were noticing or observing.
Yes, I agree with you, but it also depends. You see, the concentration at the federal level is much. And if we really want to get the fight against corruption right in this country, this is the best period to change strategies. Not only to change our strategies, we need to go to the subnational, engage at state and local government, so that when we do that, and it will now complement what the federal government is doing. So some people got the incentive, it ranged from 2 to 5%, it depends. But there are a lot of conditions attached to that incentives as well too. So, but the policy is not a total failure. it came at a point when we needed it, and we can build on it, and which this project is building on, to see how Nigerians that are ready to genuinely fight corruption or blow whistle will be protected. So that is that. And if you look at the volume of asset recovery under the last administration,
right.
Nobody can take that away from Muhammadu Buhari administration. Nigeria recovered a lot of assets. Utilization of that asset is another discussion. But in terms of recovery, the government recovered a lot of assets, and it's one of what we are now selling as a country at international meeting now, that we have that proceed of crime and act management in place, so that act now gives mandate to the anti-corruption agencies to establish directorates that will manage an utilization of returned assets, both in terms of domestic and international looted assets. So which is a plus. The law is not perfect. What we advocated for was not what the National Assembly passed, but despite that, we have something we can work on with, and there is also room for amendment. So as we are implementing, we'll be noticing gaps. We will go back to National Assembly for amendment of that act. So for the last administration, I think, and don't forget that government is continuous. So Tinubu administration need to pick it from there as well too, and continue. Now, towards the end of that administration, National Anti-Corruption Strategy 2 was adopted by the Buhari administration. They will have stopped implementing the NACs, but what they did was to continue the implementation. A lot of lessons were learned at the NACs 1, as we always refer to it. Now that we have NACs 2 in place, it is an opportunity for this new government to key into the implementation of the 5 pillars of that national anti-corruption strategy.
Right. I'm happy that you seem optimistic about how the past administration had done well in setting the pace to a proper anti-corruption fight in the country. However, why do you think Nigerians are very distrustful and do not believe that the past administration in fact did well? This is a question that was raised during that dialogue we had yesterday. It was difficult for participants to agree with you that the past administration, even though coming on the heels of fighting corruption, did a tremendous work in the fight against corruption. There were good policies that we want to reckon with, but this implementation, and in your speech you kept saying that's another kettle of fish. There's another kettle of fish. Yes. But let's get to that kettle of fish where the utilization of these recovered funds, whatever happened?
Now, you see, don't forget I mentioned it depends on the perspective you are looking at the last administration, even this current administration.
No, we will get to the current administration. Let's appraise the past administration.
Remember that the sum of $322.5 million, which we popularly refer to as Abacha 2.
Yes.
When that money came into the country, the government make use of that money for the victims of corruption. That is indigent,
those who have, yes,
indigent Nigerians. Some people may tell you that what is 5,000, what is 10,000, because we are lucky we find ourselves in within the Abuja. To average Nigerians who lives in rural communities, we tell you that 5,000 is something, and up to today is money. It depends on the side of the country you are. That money was used judiciously.
In your opinion?
In my opinion.
Right.
It was used judiciously because we had opportunity to be part of our independent monitor of that project. And we saw the beneficiaries, people that make use of that money. Unfortunately, COVID-19 set in. So there was mix-up with the Abacha loot disbursement and the palliative for Nigerians. Despite that, that money was given to the Nigerians that deserve to get that money. Because at the inception, it was part of the resources used to commence the program NSIP, Social Investment Program, when it was domiciled in the office of the Vice President. We had problem with that social intervention when politicians try now to be part of the process, and that was when that initiative was moved from the office of the Vice President to the newly created Ministry of Humanitarian. That was where we got it wrong, and that was in 2019. But before 2019, from 2016 to 2018, that initiative was tremendously implemented. Beneficiaries were known because the register that they used that time. And it's also good to mention that that register is different from beneficiary register.
Really?
Yes. This beneficiary register, they pull it out from the social register.
Okay.
Based on the circumstances of that period.
But we remember that the social register enumeration was done after the beneficiary register.
Yes, that register was developed in collaboration with World Bank. So the integrity of that register at no point is in doubt. But when
that's contrary to what we are hearing lately.
Yes, to those that may likely not have understanding of how that register were developed. The NEC that came out, don't forget that the members of the NEC are newly elected governors.
70% of the
governors that doesn't have information about the register. Even the returned governor among the NEC members. You remember at the initial stage of that project, some states resisted to be part of it.
Yes.
Did you get it?
Exactly.
So, and that resistance came majorly from PDP dominated states. Unfortunately, you know, we politicize things a lot in Nigeria, and it is when we do away from politicization of such initiatives, it is about Nigeria, it's about Nigerians. When we look at it from that perspective, irrespective of who is our president, who is your governor, if president is from APC or from NDDC or from any party, it is our president. It is not the president of that party. Exactly. So that was the mistake that many governors made that time. That this is APC, they used it to do campaign that time, will not be part of that register. But people that benefited from that process are from Nigeria.
I repeat that I saw people from Cross River State. That is me, and I know that the work that went down in ensuring that indeed the poorest of the poor were identified and captured in that register. So I personally, having had this feeling, and I'm a journalist, if I travel to Cross River for my leave and I see what's going on, I want to go in depth. I followed them. Yes, exactly. I followed them. So it's difficult for me to sit here and undermine the process that brought about the social register that is being undermined, and I'm watching it without knowing what to do to help that. However, what do you think should be done to put people into this tent assembly rather, that does not seem to have the proper knowledge behind their conclusion as to the credibility of that social register? What do you think more can be done? Should constituents reach out to their representatives
I think the first thing that needs to be done is to work around building their capacity and also create opportunity for them around the understanding of the social intervention program.
Right. Because
we should not think because they are senators or because they are governors, they understand everything. So I will encourage that development partners that have resources to support civil society organization, media organization, to create avenue for capacity building on how to make use of social intervention that we have direct link with ordinary Nigerians in this country. Once we can build their capacity, when they have that understanding of what it takes and how governance should be done, especially at the grassroots. You can't be my senator and you hardly come home, and always you are in Abuja. We can't
when,
access
when you're
you.
supposed, when the constitution says you should have a
You should
legislative office,
you should have
in your
constituency office.
Right.
You should be liaising with your constituents, giving them doing town hall meeting, give them feedback, update them. It is when we create that mechanism where there will be discussion, dialogue between the governed and the governed. Then we have that understanding, capacity building, information sharing, sensitization of the political office holders. Now we are expecting National Assembly now to constitute their committee. Many people find themselves in committees that don't even have background knowledge of the committee they have to work on. So I will encourage development partners to make resources available to engage National Assembly at that committee level. Set up a retreat for them. Let them understand the mandate of their committee. For example, if you are in the committee that saddled with responsibility on implementation of Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, you should understand the
all the 17
goals. Beyond understanding the 17 goals, you should understand the indicators of measuring
key performance
indicator, if we are on the track or not. For example, the SDG 1 that talks about poverty reduction,
right.
2 that talks about universal basic education,
right.
3 that talks about gender inclusion and what have you. So if you don't have that basic knowledge, it will be difficult when you are going for your oversight activities.
Exactly.
When it comes to budgetary the defense from the MDAs that are related to that ministry, it will also be very difficult for you to. But once your capacity has been built and you have that knowledge of your role as member, chairman, or deputy chairman of a particular committee, you will be able to understand what to do. Let's say, for example, police committee on security, maybe police is the case study. You should be able to understand how to engage. What do we do? Nigerians have been yearning for community policing, state policing, any name you want to call it. If you don't have that knowledge, you will still be looking at that federal police. It is what we need. But if you interact with real Nigerians that stay at rural communities, I was surprised when I read in the news that the FCTCP said they don't have fuel.
Yes, that the fuel subsidy regime hits them hard. And so I remember talking about that and asking myself why we should even see that on headlines.
At all. Because what I expect the police or the commissioner of police to do is to strategize. How do we do it? Can we now move closer to the community? Can we encourage the vigilantes to be part of? Because they can't do it alone. They are overwhelmed as well too. So if community policing will solve our security problem, if corruption will solve our problem, how? And we just design strategy to do it. But my concern is this: as an anti-corruption expert, I always tell people, corruption is not even our problem. Our problem is impunity. If I do it, what will happen? And
absolutely nothing often happens.
It is,
or rather, we do not see that those who we place highly, when they are complacent, we don't see them being
exactly. So it is when we can get it right at that level, then we'll see things changing in Nigeria.
Well, I think this is a good time to just call for a short break, as we've gone half hour into the conversation, believe it or not. Well, this is still Joy Asanya Live. We'll go for a short break. When we return, we're still talking about how Nigerians, citizens, the office of the citizens, as is often referred to, can be part of this anti-corruption fight. We have a new government. What can we do to set the pace or set the agenda to ensure that there's a proper anti-corruption fight implementation, not just policy? We'll be right back after this. Welcome back from that short break. We still have in the studio Mr. Lukman Adekule, Executive Director of the 21st Century Community Empowerment for Youth and Women Initiative, that's the CEYWI. He's also a cluster member for the Anti-Corruption Cluster of the SCALE project of the African Network for Environment and Economic Justice. Again, I am happy we are doing this, but let's get to how we can set an agenda for the new administration. How can we ensure in this agenda we are setting that Nigerian citizens understand their contributions to the anti-corruption fight? And while you're at it, also mention how corruption fights back. At least in the last administration, we heard our last president admit to that.
Yep. Thank you. I think you've mentioned the first thing to be done for this administration, that is agenda setting. We need to put them on the track on what Nigerians expect from this current administration. What are we expecting from them? We are expecting good standard of living. We are expecting a secured nation. We are expecting a country where corruption will be reduced drastically. We are expecting a country where we can sleep with our two eyes closed. Having said that, setting the agenda alone will not solve the problem. Nigerians need to be involved. And for Nigerians to be involved, it means we also need to set agenda for ourselves. How do I want to be part of governance at different level? And I always tell people, how many of us even know our councillor that is representing our ward? It's good. It's very easy to blame anybody at the ends of affair. But I can tell you, if we do small random sampling now of 10 Nigerians, ask them the name of their ward councillor, hardly you will get 60% that will tell you, I know my councillor.
Exactly.
I know him. So we need to change our orientation as citizens towards governance. We need to play active role in governance.
So what you're saying is that we often look towards the federal, the president.
Yes.
If anything goes wrong, no matter how minute it might be,
it is the president. So can we all also retrace and set agenda for ourselves and say, okay, I want to be participatory in how Nigeria is being governed. At my local government level, I want to engage my councillor. I want to engage the chairman of my local government. From there, you can now mobilize yourself as group of young engineers, group of young accountants, group of young Christians, group of young Muslims, group of young anything, group of retirees, because when governance is participatory and inclusive, we get good outcome from it, irrespective of your age. Then when we do that, we can now improve by going to state level. Who are the commissioners? From which local government are they from? Before you blame your governor, you should be able to have access to the commissioner of agric.
Right.
When you understand the policies and programs of each ministry, because it is high time we sectorize our engagement in governance. If your interest is around education, you should be able to know, you should have interest in who is the commissioner of education. You should be able to understand the department, agencies under Ministry of Education. You should be able to have knowledge of budgetary allocation to Ministry of Education. Then during budget process, you should have some demands from your own area because you have peak education. There's nothing stop you to also mobilize some people to have interest in health. You can have some group in agric. You can have some people in power. You can have some people across different sectors whereby you aggregate all the needs. At a point, one of the problems we have as a country is policy somersaulting. We hardly harness our policies. We will start something very good. Once we implement it for the first 3-4 years, we abandon it and bring new innovation because of what we like to copy what is not really workable for us as a nation,
or relatable to our
because
peculiar
for example,
to our person, our environment.
If World Bank want to build a model primary school, say 3-story building,
right,
across African countries, if it is our turn in Nigeria, do we need such building? The answer is no. Instead of giving us 2-3 stories building, why not you give us a story building? Let's make use of that resources to fence the school. Let's make provision for toilets. Let's make provision for recreation center for the students.
Exactly.
Because
sporting area as well.
Applicable in a country may not be applicable in Nigeria.
Right.
Do you get it? So we need to set our priority as it suits the situation we are. So that is number one. Then when you now mobilize citizens, irrespective of their background, their religion, because if you want to do social audit, which is one of the tools to fight corruption in Nigeria, you need to be sentiment free. I want to engage my governor. I'm not engaging my governor because it's from my side. It's not from my local government. It's not of my religion. It's not of my. Do you get it? So I want to engage my governor based on service delivery. Service delivery in the agric, in the health, in the education, in the water resources. Then we can now form cluster of social auditors that we engage, and we need information. And how do we get information? We can leverage on Freedom of Information Act. We have to engage with the budget, get procurement plan from relevant ministry. No ministry in Nigeria procure without having procurement plan. So once you lay your hand on procurement plan, you review the procurement plan, and these days that we have technology, you can get some people, you can get any Society of Engineer to say, okay, we have a BOQ, bill of quantity,
right,
that 6 classrooms will be built in our community. And in this bill of quantity, they are going to use 14 mm twisted rod. Once the contractor comes to your site, and that is the role of Community Development Association. You know, these days we are losing all those structures at community level because of politics. So once they bring such BOQ, you analyze it with experts and look at it. Once the contractor arrives your community to build such, the next you do is to look at the BOQ if the contractor is implementing that project according to that BOQ. For example, they said each classroom should have 6 windows, and the 6 windows should be 4x4.
Right.
Do you get it? You don't need to be an engineer. You can engage an engineer from your community to be part of that. That's what's called participatory governance. Then they can look at it and say, Mr. Contractor, the BOQ reads 4x4. This is 3x3.
But how receptive are these people, especially when it comes from governance? Because speculations out there is that the politicians take over.
We are not showing interest in what they are doing for us. We believe it is their own. Forgetting that as a Nigerian, whether you like it or not, directly or indirectly, you are paying tax.
Of course.
And it is all these taxes they will aggregate to come and do social amenities in our communities. So that is why it should interest us. If, for example, if they want to lay, let's say they want to do a water project in your community, and they said after this, the contractor should erect an overtank of certain height. If the height is not, what does it take somebody to take a measurement tape and measure and say, no, contractor,
this is the
right 14 height, this is 13, or
exactly.
This is 12. So once you do that, you can flag it with the concerned ministry. Then they will learn lesson from that. That is participatory governance. Where you
do we have citizens that are interested?
Yes, we have.
In this,
Yes.
I'm talking about apart from the CSOs.
We have
been doing a lot.
And I give you an example. You remember there was a video that I saw on social media late last year from a particular community in Edo State. I will not.
Yes, I think I remember of gutters that were not properly done. Yes.
By citizen, you know, and today that representative is back to 10th Assembly again.
He was voted in.
So now,
in spite of the effort of the citizens.
So it means He went back to the community to amend those errors.
Oh, he did?
Yes, he did. So now, he will now realize that his people are now
more aware,
aware to track what he's doing. Because it's not only to leave your community and come to Abuja or go to state capital in the case of State House of Assembly and collect the allowances, get the cars and whatever. No, you need to represent them well. Because the duty of legislature, for example, is around that three main area.
Exactly.
Representation, lawmaking, oversight work.
Duties.
Because oversight is to check the executive. You say you are going to do ABCD. Can we see it? If it is not cash backed, you should be able to explain to the members of the parliament, and they will all agree because it is one government. So for citizens to be part of governance to fight corruption, we also need to change our own orientation towards governance. We should not see it as we versus them. We should see it as our project.
Right.
When we see it as our project, we will now be able to see the reason why we should play that active role in governance. And when we are doing that, we can't completely erase corruption, but we can reduce it. And we need to start from various homes. How many parents now even check their wards bags when they return back from schools?
To ensure what?
To ensure that they don't have a pen that does not belong to them. How many parents? Those are the things that many of us we have abandoned. How many people we see a traffic light and we observe it effectively? Very, very few. Somebody was telling me that, why should I be observing traffic light in the night? But when he gave me his reason, at a point, I reasoned along with him. He said, I can be robbed.
Yes, unfortunately,
Do you get it?
I hear that a lot.
But
that's also...
That doesn't mean I should
exactly.
not observe, because somebody may likely want to cross the road.
At that time, having seen the light.
Rely on the traffic light.
Exactly.
So, but I agree with him because of the insecurity.
Mr. Adekunle, let's go back to this agenda setting. What is indeed that procedure to ensure this new administration is set right? Because when we start by disregarding completely the social register, for instance, it gives you that impression that, do we even understand? And what's the body language you have noticed from this new administration as to their fight against corruption?
I think this administration have not seen where they even mention they are going to fight corruption. But that doesn't mean they will not fight corruption, because corruption is a systemic thing. So if you are going to strengthen operation of ministry, department, and agency, indirectly you are fighting corruption, because I believe that it's better to prevent, not to happen.
Of course.
That is my own advocacy.
Do we have strengthened the institutions
If
enough?
we can strengthen the institution, if we work closely with organizations like Code of Conduct Bureau, Office of Auditor General of the Federation, you see those two organizations, they are the foremost anti-corruption agencies. But
not even the EFCC, the
no. If EFCC, ICPC, they were all created by Act of Parliament.
Right.
Code of Conduct Bureau and Office of the General were created by Constitution of Nigeria, 1999 as amended. They are the mother anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria. But you know what? Office of the Auditor General of the Federation, they are still operating with 1957 laws. That is the law before even the independence of Nigeria.
Wow.
So if this administration want to fight corruption, and one of the agenda we can set for them is to work closely with development partners and get new audit law for us in Nigeria. 1957 is a shame that we are still using that. Look at the Code of Conduct Bureau. Their mandate is to, we all know about one out of their code, which is asset declaration code.
That isn't even implemented.
They have 12 or 13 codes that they are to work on with Nigerians. issue of ethics is there, integrity is there. But even the one that we all even know them with, today, if you go to Code of Conduct Tribunal, they hardly sit. They hardly sit because they can't form quorum. They have only 2 judges there.
And 2 is not a quorum.
So, if Code of Conduct Bureau can be strengthening, can be given enough resources, training, I'm telling you, if we can start and also digitalize asset declaration form, whereby as civil servants, you know, people always think asset declaration is only to the political
actors.
It's to civil servants and the political actors. So if I can sit down on my bed and fill my form and upload it, the law may have issue. And what is the issue? The law didn't say if president should declare, I should display it to anybody. That is where some civil society are having an issue.
Right.
That they want to see the content. You can't see the content because the law didn't permit the bureau to give the content of anybody's asset declaration form to the public. Except it was only President Yar'Adua
that made it public, yes,
because
exactly.
he so wished to show that political will.
Just so that others can follow suit.
Then the former executive secretary of ANEEJ did that too. He demonstrated that. In fact, the day he finished his tenure, he went there. In fact, he announced, we were at a meeting and he said, today is the last day. Let me go and quickly update my form and make it public. And he did. So we have very few people that can do that. But if this government can strengthen key anti-corruption agencies, then 2, there is need for us to, if it is to merge, if it is to scrap some agencies of government.
Scrap?
Because of duplication.
Multiplicity of mandates.
If you take Orasanye report,
we're back to the Orasanye report.
Yes, if you look at that report, there are a lot of laudable recommendations.
Right.
That report now has spent about 11 to 12 years.
Without implementation.
It's still gathering dust. If we look at that document, nobody is going to lose his or her job. We are going to harmonize. Why do we need ministry of this, ministry? Now, if you ask me, let me give you a few examples.
Right.
We have Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. We have Ministry of Women Affairs. We now have NDE. What is NDE doing that Ministry of Humanitarian and Social Development cannot do? If you look
want it harmonized.
If you look at their mandate, very
they are too
close.
Similar.
People complain of ICPC and EFCC. Their mandates differs. One of the mandates of ICPC is to look into system strengthening and create awareness on corruption.
Right.
The major mandate of EFCC is to fight financial crimes.
Right.
So you
can see that there's distinction.
Very clear distinction between EFCC and ICPC mandate.
Right.
The EFCC, another mandate of EFCC, ICPC is to look at administrative corruption.
Exactly.
In the ministry, department, and agency and private sector. But EFCC mandate is wider. It covers a lot. Even if you are not going to merge the 2 of them or scrap any one of them, there should be synergies and collaboration among the 27 government agencies with anti-corruption mandate in Nigeria. Standard Organization of Nigeria, NFIU, police, immigration, customs, about 27. They are being coordinated by interagency tax team.
Exactly.
Within the Office of Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reforms. So we are saying, let's work together so that, because if you look at the last, Nigeria has been reviewed twice by United Nations Convention Against Corruption review process.
And how are we doing?
We are not doing bad, because if you look at the recommendations, about 57 recommendations, I think we have implemented over 40 from that recommendation. So, and that was what the lady from UNODC was referring to yesterday. The remaining 11 is just something that if we are serious, we can get it right.
And I'm asking you again, this administration, how can we ensure that the fight against corruption and these recommendations, how can we implement them and ensure that everybody's hand is on deck? Because we cannot put aside what corruption does to development.
To implement the remaining recommendation and others, once we can implement NACS very well, National Corruption Strategy very well, the 5 pillars cut across. There are leading agencies saddled with responsibility to lead. Unfortunately, the last NACS, no funding for them to implement. Funding play active role. For example, the first pillar of the NACS talks about reorientation of Nigerians, awareness creation,
and advocacy.
You understand now? Now, the leading agency there is National Orientation Agency, which Ministry of Information and Culture,
which we already know is not funded enough
resources.
Yes, they're not funded enough to do their mandate.
They have offices across the 774 local government, but do they have resources to engage? The answer is no. I'm telling somebody that if the current DG should finish his tenure, we may hardly hear no again.
That's how bad it is.
Yes.
In spite of having a new administration, renewed hope and all of that.
Except if we are going to change our strategies of engagement, because we need to engage agencies like NOAA. NOAA transformed from another agency under Babangida. Babangida created MAMSA.
Yes.
It was MAMSA that we have been changing names, transforming.
And now we have the NOAA.
We have NOAA now, which we need to change orientation of Nigerians towards governance. Nigerians should not see it as, let them be doing it, I will be doing my own. Their problem, that is their problem. Anybody I want to be my governor should be my governor. Anybody I want to be my councillor should be my councillor. We should play a role. You may not have interest to become a governor or a commissioner, but those that want to become, you should be part of the process. So that when they are doing the wrong thing, you can call them to order. I say, no, when we are doing this process before your primaries, we agreed on certain thing. There are, we call it ask from politicians. You are going to do A, B, C, D for us.
Right.
Once you get there.
Mr. Adekunle, we really have run out of time, but I really want you to address this. For some of us who, and I'm sure Nigerians who are watching you, who are anti-corruption advocates or activists, whatever works for you, what would you say we should amplify, especially as this government is trying to put things into perspective to steer the affairs of governance?
One, the National Assembly should fast-track process of passing the outstanding anti-corruption bills before them, especially the whistleblowing protection bill.
Right.
Because once I know I'm protected, that gives me some level of
confidence
to come out, participate in governance. Having said that, I want to see this government work harmoniously with National Assembly and state governors so that on the utilization of returned assets, both locally and internationally. We have some assets at local level. Nobody bothers to even talk about that. So let the government at the federal level work closely with sincerity so that they can utilize the returned assets for sustainable development.
I must thank you for being part of the program. We've been discussing with Lukman Adekunle. It's been a struggle getting you on my program.
No.
I must say it so that my viewers understand what it means, what the honor it is to have you join us today.
It's not intentional.
Of course, I understand.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
Also look forward for further discussion around the issue because we need to deal with corruption in Nigeria.
I agree with you. And I must also appreciate you for the work that you do to put government in perspective and keep them transparent, which is the most important. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Nigerians, for listening.
Right. We've been discussing with Lukman Adekunle, Executive Director of the 21st Century Community Empowerment for Youth and Women Initiative. That's the CEYWI. He's also a cluster member of the Anti-Corruption Cluster of Scale Project. That's of the African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEEJ. This is where we draw the curtains on Joy Asonye Live. We've had a fantastic conversation that's discussing the corruption fight and how Nigerian citizens can be part of it. We'll be back tomorrow with so much more. So do have a wonderful and restful evening.
Thank you.